Welcome back, Scotts23 here, back again with some knife therapy, and today's topic is being something a little bit different, just a discussion. I get tons of emails and DMs and stuff, always ask me what knife should I buy. And the first question I always ask them is, what will you be using the knife for? Because that makes all the difference in the world. I'm just going to talk about, the roles that I set the knives up in and how I see them, and the way different geometry plays out when you're using a knife. And if you're been collecting knives for a long time, you know a lot of this. You don't need to watch this video, but if you want to just discuss this type of stuff, I love talking about it, so stay tuned. The first type of a geometry and type of cutter that I look at is your thin stock along with a nice lean grind. So what I'm talking about is kind of like your open L's right here that are nice and thin. Let's see what they are. I didn't check these for some reason, but you got a blade stock thickness of 0.064 inches and the behind the edge thickness of 8 thousandths. So super thin, super lean, and just like this Boker Excalibur, nice and thin blade stock. It's 8 or 9 thousandths behind the edge, very thin, slicey blades, and along with that would be your razor blade. And what those are good for is your straight performers. If you're going to be doing a lot of thick cardboard cutting, like this is double ply with this thick layer on the outside, or thick corner bracing cardboard, or cutting thick rubber, any kind of thick abrasive or materials that would cause drag in a thicker stock, these knives this is what I would choose pretty much. And I mean, you can see you're pushing through this without absolutely no resistance. If you use a thicker blade stock, you're going to get a lot of drag, and it's not going to be fun to cut with. Another cool thing about your thin blade stock lean grind on there, which I mean by lean is thin grind all the way through, it's tapered down gradually, is if it's a decent blade steel, this is S35VN, this knife can get edge damage on it. I can get chips in it or rolls and some slight dulling, and it's still going to perform like it's a sharp knife. A lot longer than a thicker grind would, because that thin stock is easy to get it through that material a lot easier than, say, a knife that has 5mm blade stock and is 38 thousandths behind the edge. Once that thing gets dull, I mean, you just well rip it with your hands, you'll be better off. This one is still going to do a decent job of cutting for a lot longer. But at the same token, these straight performers, you're not going to put these in a work scenario to where you're going to be doing any light prying, which I don't recommend at all. But if you were, you're going to snap this blade. You don't want to be using this with some hard torquing on that edge, because you might crack this edge. It's not going to be super stable in a high stress environment. And this is just things that I've noticed in all the testing I've ever done. Then my next category of knives is pretty much my sweet spot on what I like in my knives, and that is medium stock thickness with lean grinds. I got some examples of those, kind of like this Wee Rectifier right here. It's got a nice and thin blade stock of 0.097 inches thick, and behind the edge thickness of about 23 thousandths, and it's a nice deep hollow grind. So with that thin stock and that decently thin behind the edge grind, it still performs nicely. That same cardboard, it whips through there. Now it's going to have a little bit more resistance than your very thin but this knife it'll have a little bit extra toughness. You can do some light, I call it a light duty worker and performer. You can do a little bit of torquing with it, and it's learning how to use your knife properly. Of course, if I wanted to, I could snap this blade just like any of the other knives if I really wanted to. So just be thinking about the application that the knives can be used in if you want the best knife for you. If you got tons of money, you buy a whole bunch of it, doesn't matter. But if you're on a budget and you're trying to get that one knife that will sit in a roll for you that makes sense, then you got to think about all these things. And I'm going to talk about a knife that did that for me a little bit later, but let's get on to another example of the medium stock thickness with the lean grind. This is a new Benchmade I got. I'll be doing a review on this if y'all want to see it. This is the Benchmade Presidio Ultra. It's got decently thin blade stock at 0.115 with a saber grind on here. Actually, maybe a hollow grind. Yeah, it feels like a hollow. And this thing's 15 thousandths behind the edge. So it's got a nice thin grind on here. Decently thin blade stock. And this guy should cut through here, yeah, without a problem. And I just hit the thumb stud, that's the only reason. But it gets through there without a problem. You could use this for light duty work tasks as well. Like I said, this one kind of fits in that in-between section, being that I don't do any heavy duty work because I can't physically do it anymore, and I don't really need that. So, if you work in an office environment and you don't work out in an industrial environment and you just need a knife that can do some work tasks here and there, then these medium duty knives might suit you well. Another good one is the Spyderco Delica. This one would be more for the very light duty because the standard version has the FRN, so it's going to flex a little bit. But this guy, it's got a nice thin blade stock of 0.094 and about 20 thousandths behind the edge. So you got your full flat grind, so it's gonna gradually, the thickness is gonna gradually taper. So that's one thing I like about the full flat grinds a lot. You don't get that wedge effect that you get from a saber grind or a low hollow grind. So this one should still perform as good as the rest. Now this one, it has a little bit more resistance just because it is a little bit thicker behind the edge than the last two. So, but it still gets the job done pretty well. This one should be a little bit more stable. And we're not talking about blade steel here. That's a whole nother factor. We're just kind of talking about the different grinds and the performance that they can give you. Last one I'm going to talk about in this category be the Benchmade Bug Out. This one, they do it blends two things pretty well. You got nice thin blade stock on here. The Bug Out is 0.090 thick, so it's thinner than all the ones that I've shown before it. Even the Rectifier, it's thinner than that blade stock. It doesn't look like it, but that's what the calipers say. But the Bug Out has a behind the edge thickness of 25 thousandths because it's a Benchmade and they like to do that. Even though the Presidio is a different different animal there. But the Bug Out is great in a few ways because you have that thin blade stock, so whenever you're cutting through thicker materials, it's not going to create that huge wedge effect. And they kind of kept it, decently, not thick, but they kept it thicker than some of these other ones down to the high, almost the full flat grind up here. So you're still going to get nice performance, but you got some meat behind the edge right there, 25 thousandths, to where you still got a good slicer, but you're going to be able to put a little bit more, a little bit more pressure on that edge. Now see this one, yeah, see it's causing a little, that's whenever you're getting, that behind the edge thickness, when it gets up there, it starts to, create a little bit more drag. And even though it's cutting through there, I am having to put a little bit more effort through that. So, you know, if you're gonna be cutting through thick materials all day, you might wanna get a knife that has a little bit leaner of a behind the edge thickness with the thinner stock, because you'll create that wedge when it gets to the full thickness if not. Now the next is two knives that I carry most often, you know, for several different reasons, but these are in-betweeners. They're not the medium and they're not heavy users, but they're in between where you got decent performance, you got you can do some light and some heavy work tasks with them. And those two examples are the Booz Blade Smoke that I showed in the video recently, or depending on when this gets uploaded. Now, being the style of this knife, I wouldn't put it into a harder roll task. I keep this into more of a light task knife that has the capabilities of a semi-hard user, I guess you could say. And I only say that because you have the blade thickness of 0.157, which is thicker than all the ones I've shown so far by a good margin. But with that full flat grind up here, it gets down to 22 thousandths behind the edge. So it still comes to a decently thin grind on here because of the high full flat grind. So I should be able to cut through this thick cardboard. Yeah, see, without a problem. It zips through there better than the bug out, and that's mainly because the grind gets thinner as it goes down than the bug out. The next one, this one, I would, if you wanted to use this roll, you could use it in a heavier duty work environment, and I call this one kind of the jack of all trades, master of none, and that'd be the Millet Knives Torrent. It definitely masters the smoothness because it's the smoothest knife in the collection. But the Torrent, it's got 0.134 at the blade stock, which is a little bit thinner blade stock than the Smoke. But kind of like the Bug Out does, you have the 0.134 inch blade stock, but the behind the edge thickness of 30 thousandths, and that's because you have this middle height. I'm not sure if that's a flat. I think, let's see. I think this is a hollow grind, if I'm not mistaken. It feels like a hollow grind, and but with that thick stock on there, or medium thickness stock, and that behind the edge thickness of 30 thousandths, you got a good bit of meat behind that edge. So let's see how it performs on this thick cardboard. You see, it gets through the thick cardboard. I definitely feel the resistance, especially when it gets to that full thickness right there. But it can definitely handle this, and I think it could definitely handle some of your heavier duty tasks. Maybe some light prying through, you know, trying to pull a pallet apart or something like that. Nothing I recommend. But, you know, doing that heavy torquing if you had to, or, you know, those type of tasks, which, if y'all stay tuned to my channel, I plan on putting this knife through those harder tasks to see how it holds up. Should be interesting. I want to see what this knife can handle, and y'all stay tuned to see that. The next is a group that I don't really have a use for anymore. I do have a few knives in that category because they put a smile on my face, and that's just that. They're not the most functional, and I don't have a big roll for them anymore. And that is one reason what I asked the question to myself whenever I was looking for a knife 5 years ago or 6 years ago or longer, whenever I started working as an operator in an industrial chemical plant. I needed a heavy user, something that I could, you know, put stress on, not have to worry about snapping the blade, do some heavy duty cutting. I'm not worried about that edge chipping or cracking on me. and I bought the Grayman Knives Duo. This thing's a beast. It's an American-made knife, super smooth. It's got the same bushings as a Sebenza does, so you know, still being robust. This thing's on Teflon. I mean, this thing's on phosphor bronze washers, and it's one of the smoothest knives I have on phosphor bronze because of that pivot bushing. Now, these heavy users are in that strict role, I would say, kind of the jack of all trades, master of none. This is definitely not going to be your slicer because you have this low saber grind right here with a blade stock thickness of 0.165, way thicker than all these other ones. The only one that came close was the Booz Blade Smoke, which doesn't look as that thin because it has these chamfers on the outside. But this is a thick blade stock. But 0.165, let's see what that is, because some people only comprehend in the millimeters. But so this is 4.18 millimeters. So decent, pretty thick stock, and what's really giving it that robust, hard-working type knife is 38 thousandths behind the edge. That is pretty thick behind the edge. That's getting to that splitting maul, fixed blade, you know, type of knife that you know you're gonna be really putting to that extra work. When it comes to cutting this type of stuff, it's not going to really do it, you know. It's definitely creating a wedge. I might be able to go with the grain of it. Yeah, I can go with it, but I'm putting tons of force behind that, and I definitely wouldn't want to have to cut up this whole box from start to finish. No, that just put, you know, marks on my hands because I was putting so much pressure. But you know, when you need a knife for certain, you know, hard tasks. Sorry about that. The dogs are excited because my daughter got here. This is a good option. And another one is the Hinder Half Track. This is one that I've been enjoying just because it's a nice EDC size, comfortable in hand, profile kind of fits. It's a little bit smaller than the Duo. And the Half Track is the same thickness as the Duo, or this is 0.165, this is 0.164, so my calipers could have been a little bit off. This one's a little bit better of a slicer because this one's 38 thousandths behind the edge, this one's 35 thousandths behind the edge, which is not a huge difference, but you do notice the difference in cutting the cardboard. I can get through this cardboard a lot better, and one main reason for that is because you almost have a full flat grind here. You have a 3/4 of the way saber grind, which this one you have a half saber grind, you know, your flats. You get to the full edge thickness really quick up here. It's thinner behind the edge on the Half Track, you know. So that's all the different categories, how I kind of group knives when somebody says they're looking for, say, a work knife, or I need a work knife, but I'm in an office environment, you know, and I cut up this kind of stuff. That's all those kind of questions that I ask, you know, people when they ask me that question, because I can't just tell you, you know, go buy the Booz Blade Smoke, it's going to be good for everything you do. No, I wouldn't put this in a heavy duty work task. It's just not that type of knife. Or I wouldn't tell somebody to buy an Open L because it's only $8 or $12 and go try to make this a work knife. You're going to break it. It's going to crinkle. Same goes with, like, you know, the right tool for the job. That's plain and simple. So y'all let me know if y'all like this type of video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them down below. If you're not already and you like my content, hit that subscribe button. While you're at it, hit the bell notification button so you don't miss anything. YouTube loves to hide videos or unsubscribe you, but if you have that bell notification button on, it won't unsubscribe you, and you'll be notified anytime I have a new video. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up, share it with all your friends and family on your social networks, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.